Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of a podcast with Pete. So the first ever episode of this kind of podcast series that I've wanted to do for the longest time. Today I had a sit down and a conversation with Denis Jackson-Wade, or you can find him on Instagram and Facebook at Yoga with Denis. And it was a really cool conversation. I really enjoyed talking with Denis today. We covered a load of topics about yoga in Northern Ireland, mental health, and a good few other things. We obviously did it through Zoom and not in person, so there was a technical hitch kind of 10 minutes in, but apart from that, it is a really good conversation, and I had a lot of fun recording this, and I really hope to do a lot more in the future. So thank you very much, and I will see you on the other side. Thanks.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. All right. So, hey.
Hi, Pete. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, doing grand. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Yeah.
So, you are a yoga teacher.
I am. Yes.
Cool. And when did you get into kind of yoga teaching?
I started teaching in 2012.
Okay.
I had been practicing yoga from about 2007, and whenever you start practicing and you're like, oh, what's this? And then very quickly, I just knew that is what I was going to end up. I just knew that's what I was going to end up doing, for my vocation. I look at it as a vocation rather than as a job.
Okay.
I just knew that was going to happen. So I was just practicing and just enjoying my practice, and I was training to be a massage therapist at the time, and that's the area that I was planning to go to with for a career path. And after spending 13 years in restaurants, and then in 2011, I had enough money saved and went and did my teacher training, and came back, and I was already going to Flow as a student. And then whenever I came back, then I started teaching 1 or 2 classes a week, and that's how it started.
Brilliant. And that's you've kind of just continued on with that then,
Yeah, just continued on. Yeah. I've been with Flow from the very early days, not from the very start, but when I first started teaching, Flow didn't have Hill Street; they just had Malone Road, and so it's kind of the right place at the right time, I suppose, in terms of being with people that are building a studio and building a community and expanding outwards, and just kind of it was all just very natural.
Yeah.
It just felt right. So so then I've been teaching ever since.
Brilliant. Yeah, it seems to have exploded in the last 10 years or something, just as an industry or as a business. It seems to just become especially in places where you wouldn't have normally seen it as a thing. Yeah. It's just yoga in general has just really, really taken off.
It really has, yeah. I was practicing several different styles of yoga all at the same time.
Okay.
But the first yoga class I ever took was with Yoga Belfast, and they're no longer operating as Yoga Belfast anymore. And it was with Chandra Mowley. And it was in Belfast Community something centre, which is at Ryder Square, and it's an accountants now.
Okay.
So I was coming to the Cathedral Quarter to practice yoga in 2007, when there was nothing even going on at the Cathedral Quarter. People would just go there to go to church, and that was about the height of it. There was nothing else around there. So that was my first class, and back then it was 6 or 7 people in a room. Class was an hour and a half. Incense was burning. Community hall, community center. Nothing, nothing fancy. But I used to leave going, wow, I really feel like myself again.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's everywhere. Now it's
I
like
know it's
just
everywhere.
Yeah, now it's
like
everywhere.
gyms are doing it now. Like it's just crazy how it's like kicked off. The cathedral quarter's really changed as well. Like as a thing, it's just like booming.
It's
Well,
yeah.
It's really, well, not at the
pre
minute.
not a minute pre COVID. It was
Pre-COVID, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's
But it's
it's
wonderful to see how much yoga has expanded. In Northern Ireland, it used to be it was either hatha, iyengar, or ashtanga.
okay.
Those are the three that pop to mind, and that I'm aware of. So it's nice to see that it's expanded, and there's an awful lot of variety, and people can choose what best suits their personality. Really, I find not it's got nothing to do with body type and what people prefer. Really, it really is what practice resonates with each individual.
Okay. So what's your kind of go-to practice? What would you?
My go-to practice would be like very slow flows, or really it's mostly yin.
Mhm.
I kind of have to push myself to practice more energetic practices.
Okay.
um, I don't know if that makes me lazy or not. I'm not sure.
No. I'm the other way around. Like I'm very go go go. So it's like I find the in classes for me are really good, but it's like a struggle, if you know what I mean, for me to sit still as opposed to like I
Yeah.
would rather it all fast and upbeat. But
Yeah.
Well, I've been through the whole spectrum. Like I used to practice. Um, so at the start, my first class was a Shivananda class. And then I did around the same time I went to a younger yoga class with Claire Ferry, and she
okay,
was in the Cathedral Quarter in the Buddha Center. She was renting the Buddha Center out once or twice a week. And then I was doing that for a couple of months. And then I started doing Bikram yoga over near where Craft World is,
oh
North
yeah,
Queen Street. And then, of course, that was a totally different um, vibe practice. Like it was high energy. It was very athletic. It was very, very, very physically demanding. And all of those practices, they were so different, but they served me in different ways that I needed. And I think you need to go down that place of inquiry as well to explore what is working for you at the time. And the one thing that I like about yoga is, I mean, we always say to students, oh, let go of this and let go of that. And, you can practice something and it can serve you at that time. And whenever you don't need it anymore, you can just kind of, close the book on it and then be like, right, well, now I'm over here, doing this practice at this stage of my life, for whatever reason you need it for.
that's a really nice way of looking at things rather than just like making yourself stick to one practice. Is kind of taking a bit out of a few of them and then, like you said,
Yeah.
kind of some because
Yeah.
sometimes I really don't feel like doing much with in the way of like heavy movements or whatever, and it's only been the last couple of months actually where I've gotten quite into yin and the
Mhm.
slow down and stuff. But that's really like, especially at the minute, because I think everything's amplified and a bit intense and stuff. Hey,
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh, hey, cutie.
I think it's like the yin is really beneficial at the minute. You know.
And like if you look at it in broader terms, without being a philosopher of any description, what we're experiencing now with coronavirus and lockdown, like this entire period of time is really a period of yin. It's a
Yeah,
period
yeah,
of like reflection. It's a period of like retreat inwards,
yeah.
and we can naturally allow ourselves then to give ourselves over to that sort of energy. But then being
Yeah.
human beings, it can be difficult because we're like, oh, I should be doing all of these things now that I've got all this free time, you know.
Yeah, well, you do. You kind of, you don't, a lot of people, like myself included, don't ever really give themselves a minute to sit. And I think this has forced everything, like you're saying, to kind of close and everyone to withdraw. But it's like, we don't like, doing that. We want to keep it going and what's next. And.
Yeah.
I suppose that's maybe the nature of the world, right? Of the speed of which the world has become. I don't know anything about that sort of thing, like physics and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sure people out there would say, energy people would out there and say that the speed of the world is actually increasing, and
Okay.
that's that that yang energy, that constant churning, that, you know, we're now moving into 5G, we're now expanding phones and internet even further, where, you know, business is going to be pushed even further, the climate's getting worse, you know, like human capacity keeps expanding, and with that, people are still churning, and people are experiencing more anxiety and more like mental health problems and more physical exhaustion to try to maybe keep up with it, and they don't even realize that that's what they're having to do, you know. Oh, you have frozen.
Just put it down to my crappy internet that I have down here.
Scratch your ground.
But yeah, no, you were saying there just before it cut off, it got really good. You were saying about like the world speeding up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that would say that sort of thing. I mean, that's just an observation that I'm making myself.
Yeah.
But the world just seems to be speeding up, and you know, you have people are just, they're just tired, you know, and they're just tired of trying to have to keep up with everything. And you know, I kind of look at this, what's going on now, you know, am I eager to get back to life before? I mean, I wouldn't mind having, you know, more freedom, and well, you know, obviously not having the virus and having your freedom in that regard. But, you know, I suppose as a teacher, was my life, you know, something that I want to return to? Yes, you know, but not everybody can say that, you know, about their lives. And I'm in a privileged position to be able to teach yoga for a living. You know, that's not without its stresses or anything like that, or it's not without its anxieties. You know, with things like financial security and the future and blah 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 blah. Because some people, like so many people, have so many bigger worries, like family problems, work problems, financial problems. But yeah, like this effort of having to keep up, people are just, they're just done, I think.
Yeah, it's strange because I think social media and things like that, personally for me, it makes it a lot more kind of rapid and quick, and everything needs to be updated in real time, and it's all like, I think people have started to feel the pressure of that as well. And this is like, you know, I think a lot of people are going to kind of, I know I'm going to struggle back, kind of going back into my job, because I'm kind of wanting to come to kind of teach yoga full time, but I'm going to struggle going back to my work, even though I don't hate it. You know, it's something that I don't hate doing, but this has given me personally like a moment of reflection, and and you're right, we are privileged to sort of have that, where you can kind of take that time. But it's, you know, I'm gonna really struggle going back into like the hustle and bustle, you know, of real life, or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's going to be strange.
It's going to be strange. And I mean, luckily it'll be a staggered approach. You know, some people are asking me like, oh, you know, when are we going back? But, you know, we're still only in stage 1 of reintegrating back, and stage 5 is the final stage. And even at that, there still has to be social distancing and all that kind of stuff. So that staged approach that they've got planned anyway, that will allow us to not be overwhelmed, because you just can't go from 3 months of being indoors to like, okay, chop, let's go, let's get everything back going again. It would be so shocking to everybody's nervous systems.
Completely,
whoa. Yeah.
To go from nothing just to full in back to you know, normality would be crazy.
Yeah. So we have a responsibility to lead by example, to take care of ourselves as yoga practitioners and as yoga teachers, and to ensure that we are feeling as, you know, the best that we can be, so that we can then share that to support others, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I agree with you there. And I think like just the, you know, the ability to be able to do my practice in this time has been like a saving grace. Absolutely. And the fact that technology exists to kind of do it with other people, or your yoga teacher or whatever, is amazing. But you know, like I'm just so grateful that I have that to kind of fall back on, and make sure that I'm kind of checking on myself every day and doing the stuff, you know.
And at the same time, it doesn't mean that you know, life is easy in terms of lockdown. Like I've had plenty of highs and lows. Do you know what I mean? Where I've had
Yeah.
plenty of days just been like, oh, just not going to bother sharing today. Can't be bothered. Or, just like, no, I'm not going to do any practice today. Can't be bothered. I'm just going to eat all this popcorn and just binge watch
Yeah.
this whole season of whatever.
Totally, totally get you
So
there.
we're all human beings, and we're all going through the same thing.
Yeah. And there's
So
I take a wee bit of comfort in that, knowing that sort of like everybody is in this in some degree together, even though everyone's situation is probably unique and different. It's a
yeah,
collective thing.
it's a global thing. I mean, I'm sure you've got plenty of friends in many countries around the world. I know I have friends all over the world, and it's
Yeah.
weird it's weird that everybody is in the same position.
It is. It's really strange because it's this. It's just
Yeah.
it's obviously a thing that's global. It's not like
Yeah,
But it's
specific
funny
to
to see
countries.
how different countries and how different governments are moving with things. So, like a friend of mine in Canada, she has just started back into work last week.
Right. Okay.
She's a hairdresser, and like she's got all of her PPE and all of her stuff. And then America, were just going to work as normal, I think.
Yeah.
like
And New Zealand,
But
like I was looking, I know someone over in New Zealand at the minute, and they seem to be like handling it like really well. Like they've almost been kind of not untouched, but they're doing really, really well.
yeah. So
but it's nice to be. It's comforting, not nice. It's comforting to know that we're all in the same position. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months. But I just kind of live day to day and not think what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen next month. Because if I do,
Hmm.
the anxiety would just take over, and it would just it's not worth it.
Completely. I got caught up on that a few days ago, trying to think like a month down the line, but that
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't serve anybody at all. Like because you can't, nobody knows, like there's no blueprint to go on with this. Like, nobody knows what's going to happen in 4 weeks. So it's just day to day, minute by minute type thing.
totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
take it that way. Where do you see where, like in your kind of view, do you see yoga studios sort of opening up as they did before, or do you think there'll be like changes or what? Because I'm trying to envision, and I don't know what to think.
I would imagine that when we get the green light to go and to open our spaces again, I would imagine that governments will say, okay, per square foot, you are allowed to have X amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
That they would give you, I'm sure they would give you some sort of a formula, and then you can work out how many people you can have, rather than saying, okay, there needs to be 2 meters between every person. It would be more advisable in my mind if they said, okay, so your space is this, then these are the calculations you need to make. And so, for example, I would imagine that would be good practice. And maybe if studios have like back-to-back classes and things like that, just going back and just shifting times, just changing times of classes, and just giving longer periods between classes, so that there's no overflow between classes and people coming and going. It's like everybody can come in, practice, everybody can leave, and then everybody can come in again, rather than all this crossover. You're going to have to, so social behavior will change. But I think we'll be pretty good at it. We're pretty good in the UK and Ireland at following rules, I think.
Adapting, to kind of what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
think, we do the rule
Yeah.
following thing okay-ish,
I think we do it okay. I think we do it okay in terms of, generally in society, whenever there's like, okay, queue here, okay, go here, be here. I think we definitely do that quite well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It'll be
But
interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It won't be, there will not be a return to what we had before. It'll be interesting to see if people are going to wear masks in public.
Yeah.
When they're out
I
and
mean,
about.
personally down here, like I'm in Ballycastle at the minute, and people have sort of been like, it tends to fluctuate, wearing them and then kind of going through stages of not wearing them. But I don't know what Belfast and Bangor are like, but
and then
again, it just depends on each society. So like there's some American people I know, and they can't believe that we don't have to wear masks outside.
okay, yeah.
Like
Yeah,
in
it hasn't become a
California,
thing.
like you have to wear a mask.
Yeah,
for
it's so
example.
crazy. Like,
Whereas here it's like you don't have to wear one, and they're like, that's they think that's insane.
yeah,
Where
it's
we're
so
just kind of
yeah,
like,
it's yeah, it's crazy the difference. Yeah, I think like I can see like smaller like yoga classes, smaller gyms, like all that kind of stuff just being kept to like a group, like one specific size. People trying to keep it down in numbers, you know.
Yeah,
I saw something online which said, and fair enough, for people who are out there on their own, like self-employed people, just them, just they're the teacher, whether they're a fitness instructor, whether they're a yoga teacher, if classes reduce in size, they might have to put up their price. But
Yeah,
then where's the fine line then between like what they can afford to charge in terms of what's online, what the rate is there, what's free. There's lots of free stuff online, and who else is doing stuff out there, so but I like to think that people come to you to practice with you because they really resonate with your interpretation of the practice.
yeah, yeah,
So in terms of that, um yeah, the business world and the yoga world, there's always a clash, isn't there?
absolutely, yeah.
Um,
I think I feel very like it's quite similar to like any creative venture, and then the business world and the kind of creative side of things. They don't always mold very well together.
yeah,
Because before this all kind of happened, I was trying to do a thing where it was like a smaller yoga class of six to eight people, so it was like way down in numbers. But then I was like, I'm going to have to charge maybe a bit more for this. But
mhm,
people came because they obviously kind of wanted to kind of come to a yoga class that wasn't, if it was the first one or whatever, it wasn't full of
yeah,
people. But yeah, it's the business side of things doesn't always go hand in hand very well because it just isn't a great. I don't feel like it,
yeah.
it melds itself very well, you know.
And I don't know.
if we get in our own way with that as yoga teachers, where we have an attitude of like, oh, I just want to teach, but the world revolves. We live in the world through finance, and
Yeah.
that's how we can have a comfortable home over our heads, and that's how we can feed ourselves. And if we can't meet our basic needs, then you would have to take on like two other jobs, and then you're
Hmm.
going to be spent of energy, and then you're not going to have anything to give. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of finding that fine line. So um, I like the idea of those smaller classes. I know that it's people are starting to move towards that. I've seen things like that online in like the States, where it's like semi-private yoga studios, um, six people, eight or no more than 10, and it's a more kind of um, bespoke service. And like I know there's plenty of people that I know that will not go to pardon me, a yoga studio or yoga class because they don't like practicing in large groups.
Hmm. It can be intimidating. Like the first time I went a couple of years ago, um, I found it really intimidating to kind of try something new. And yoga is quite intimate in itself in what it is, and it's like it is strange to kind of do that in front of 20. I think it was 20 other people in that class, and it is a large number of people to kind of be in anyway, and then to try and do
Yeah,
something like it's. But like you said, you have to sort of like balance it out because I would love to just teach, small classes, but I'd also like to like make a living comfortable,
yeah,
in
Yeah, yeah.
some, so it's like, what do you do?
Doing some
The everybody's coming up with these creative ventures that they've always wanted to do, like myself included, and
Hmm.
where you've always wanted to do it for years and years and years, and you haven't done it, and then it's like, oh, we're now at home. Okay, so I'll do this thing, and you still don't know what you're doing, but
Yeah.
you do it anyway. So it's really nice to see people being creative and people putting themselves out there, and you don't need to know what you're doing in order to do, like, just start.
Hmm. That's the
You
hardest
know,
part
just
is just making a start, isn't it?
just start. We can always get in our heads so much, and um, I I get an A star for that, of like being in my mind all the time and overthinking things. And recently, I've just started to be just dropping a lot of the fear and just going, I'm just going to do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen if it? What is the worst that will happen if it doesn't work out?
Yeah, the
No one
worst
can.
case scenario, what is that going to
Yeah,
be? You know,
yeah. It's
I have this kind of thing where recently, as of late, I've started to feel like if I'm scared of that, or if I have like a fear towards it, it's probably a good thing, and I should lean into
Yeah.
that more, you know, because it serves me, or it benefits me in some other way, or I create something better than if I was to hold myself back and kind of shy away from it. So, but it's hard to do, you know, it's really hard to do.
It is hard to do.
and I read a book last summer. Um, I can never, whenever I talk to people on recordings and stuff, I can never remember the
Your mind just
titles or
goes
the
blank.
authors of anything. Um, and they were talking about leaning into the uncomfortable.
Okay.
And when you lean into the uncomfortable, um, there can be so much learning there, and there can be so much transformation there.
Absolutely. I kind of, even from a couple of months ago, from being in Costa Rica and doing my yoga teacher training, I found a load of those experiences when I was out there really uncomfortable, and I kind of wanted to just run away from them. And I
Mm-hmm.
found the more I kind of persevered through it with whatever resistance that I had in my head, the outcome was always better. Like after coming across that like line of your own, getting in your own way is really what I was doing. And once you cross that, you're like, that's not so bad. Actually, it's really good. I've learned, you
Actually,
know,
Actually, yeah, it's really good. I've learned. Actually, I'm really proud of myself.
yeah. But
You
sometimes I
know,
think, I don't know if like I'm speaking for everybody, but for me anyway, I have this automatic like no, like I like not like I'm scared of trying new things, but I've got an automatic defensive sort of let's try that, and then I'm like, oh no, and then I'll think of like 5 reasons of why I'm not going to do it, and I kind of build it up in my head. But if you just leave all that aside and do whatever it is, it works out better in the end than not doing it.
yeah, and I think
the initial no, it truly does come with. It truly does come out of like there's a fear because you're not in control of what you're about to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's out of your control completely, and you can have this great fear of like, oh, if I even for example like being invited to a party, like things
Hmm.
something like that would have um and it's still sometimes that can bother me, but that has in the past as well. That's been difficult for me, like invited. Oh right, if I go there, like who's going to be there? I'm only going to know this person. Okay, what time would I all these things start to happen. So, and then you just go, no, I'm too busy tonight, I can't, you know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that you're afraid because you don't have control. I think I know for me, I can speak for myself. So
No,
but I'm not a control
I
freak at the same time, and by
I
any
get the same
means.
thing, but do you think in my personal yoga practice, like the surrendering of control in general is something that's really, really healthy for me? Because like I try to, I mean, I probably get it a lot from my mum, you know, that kind of, she'll hate me for saying that, but you know, that kind of wanting to control everything and like kind of
mhm,
not delegate anything and wanting to be on top of stuff. Like with yoga, I have learned to like just surrender that control. And it's really, for me personally, it's really good. It leads to good things,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
I suppose, yeah, I guess. Like, well, I suppose like your yoga practice, you know, it should work.
Yeah.
It should work in ways that are non-physical.
Hmm.
And if it's not working, then it needs to be looked at, and you need to approach it in a different way, because that's essentially what it's there for, to
Yeah.
expand your awareness, to expand your vision, so you can learn things about yourself, whether you like those things or not. You know, um, recently, and I've talked about this with many people, with positive mental attitude and the fake it till you make it and all this
Hmm.
sort of thing. It's like and even language that can be used sometimes in yoga practices. It's like, oh, do this if it feels good, and only do this if it feels good, and if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. It's like, we really need to learn how to give the practice over so that people can effectively allow themselves to expand their barriers. Because if you just stay within the bracket of like, oh, well, I feel good here and that doesn't feel good, so I'm not. It's like, if it's painful, don't. If it's painful,
Hmm.
omit it.
Hmm.
If it's challenging, lean into the challenge. you know, because you don't know what's going to be there on the other side. And the same thing then applies to things in your life. And if your yoga practice isn't there to allow you, you know, to equip yourself emotionally for things in the outside world, then, you know, I know for me, you know, I need to look at that and I need to change that. Or your yoga practice isn't the be all and end all of everything. You need to draw in other things.
I think there's like a difference, like as well, you were saying there, like if it's painful, like physically painful, don't do it. But there's a difference between that and like discomfort or, you know, whatever, like mental resistance or something like that. And I have learned the difference, because it took me a long time to learn the difference, because I would have been one of those people, I would have just sat through the pain and tried to put like my foot in my mouth if I thought that's what like was meant, you know, was meant to happen. But
like leg over the head.
Yeah, that's it. And I would have just sat there, you know, hoping that I was doing it right. But like there's
going,
yeah. When we were away, like
enlightened.
One of my yoga teachers said to me, like, there's a difference between pain and discomfort. And I was like, is there? And it literally took me a few days to go, yeah, of course there is. You know, you don't want to be hurting yourself, but if it's mentally like uncomfortable or you're going through something, to sit with that itself is like, it's an empowering thing, I think, for me anyway, you know?
It is, yeah. And that discomfort is building resilience. Emotional resilience, you know, and discomfort. I experience that quite often in my yin practice. You know, it's not painful, but it's discomfort. And because you're not going anywhere, because you're quiet and you're still and you're observing, there's nowhere to go. But the mind wants you to get out of it, you know, wants to get out of that uncomfortable place. And if your mind is like that in a yin posture, what's it like whenever you're in a situation that you don't want to be in? Or what's it like whenever you're trying to make strides in your life? If you're so willing to run away from discomfort, you're just not going to follow through on so many things that you want to do in life, you know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so that really benefits. But over the past year, I've really learned that my yoga practice isn't enough to sustain my my mental health, and it isn't enough to keep me grounded. It's a complementary practice. It's a practice, and sometimes it's a real struggle, and sometimes it needs to be bolstered with other practices, whether they're physical or whether they're talking or, you know, medical treatment or, you know, whatever. I think there can be an awful lot of emphasis on just do yoga and everything will be okay, but that's far from the case, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it can be one of those things for me anyway, where like you're saying, it's like a supplementary, you know, it can be one thing, but it doesn't need to be. I shy away from a lot of stuff that says like, this is it, this is the answer, like this is the be all and end all of your mental health, your mental well-being. And for me personally, I've never found that works. Like it's a really broad scale and it changes just as much as your mental health does. You know, some days I might need something else. Some days, you know, it is enough. Some days, you know, but absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you can have things
that resonate with you maybe the most, or that you get the most out of it. Absolutely. And I suppose at the start of my yoga teaching career, I was doing lots of different things, loads of different practices, even within yoga, and going to loads of different teachers and loads of different workshops. And then there came a stage where I stopped going to classes and I stopped going to workshops, and I just did my own practice and I did my own thing. I stopped being taught by other people because I wanted to figure out what resonated best for me. Because everybody can be an expert these days, you know, self-proclaimed, or, you know, with people can have an awful lot of, yeah, like this is my practice, this is the only practice, this is the best practice. It's like, okay.
Yeah, no, I tend to shy away from that. I think that like the more like stay curious and experiment for yourself, and if you find something that works, that's brilliant. But like so many people are different, and with yoga, even within the yoga community itself, like I've noticed there's like, it's when people kind of really just cement themselves into one thing, and then it's like, this is it, this is the way to do it, that way's wrong and this way's right. It doesn't resonate with me 100%. You know, it doesn't.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a thing you said there about like resilience. Do you think like have you found yourself like practicing yoga on a daily basis or a weekly basis or whatever builds that up, like a mental resilience?
Yeah,
It definitely does build a resilience. And I notice if my practice wanes, then yeah, absolutely, I can be more, I suppose, maybe uninspired, or I can be more,
yeah, just in my
in my head, absolutely. Um, so, but it can, it can be difficult to get on the mat every single day, but
the one thing about yoga.
is that your practice it can look like anything, Like, yes, there's something to be said about, doing physical practice, doing asana, or maybe doing pranayama, but I like to chant as well. I like to chant, and I like to go to kirtans. I like to listen to yoga music as well and things like that. And, again, expanding my awareness. Whenever I started doing yoga in 2007, was I a spiritual person? No. And I was very much coming from a place of, I grew up as Catholic, and I was like a choir boy in church and all that sort of thing, until I was like 18. And I enjoyed all that, but then got to a stage where it's like, oh, I don't want any sort of religion or any sort of spiritual practice, because, that's why Northern Ireland has all of these problems, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And now I'm back to practicing bhakti yoga with Julie and Victor at Kirtan, and that's a devotional, reverential practice. That's a practice of love. It's a practice from the heart. It's a deeply spiritual practice, and that is yoga.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, because it's funny you say kirtan, because the first time that I ever experienced kirtan, like I wouldn't, before the whole yoga thing, I wouldn't have said I was particularly spiritual or religious. I know they're like, two separate things. But before the kirtan really like freaked me out big time. Like I had such resistance towards it, where I couldn't even, maybe if it was like an hour long, I really struggled to sit through, because it was like this new thing, this new experience. And again, the fear thing came up, and I was like, I can't put my finger on what this is, but I don't like this. And it's funny, and since coming home, I've like, I really would like to do more of it, and I've listened to more chanting and I've listened to more music and stuff. But yeah, again, the kind of overcoming yourself to kind of feel that. But yeah, no, kirtan's quite cool.
And so that in itself, like, again, the yoga practice is so vast that there's still room for exploration for the rest of your life. I don't think you ever get a handle on it as a teacher, where it's like, everything, there's only a limited amount. And I liked what you said previously about staying curious. That's great, stay curious, and you can have many years under your belt and this, that, and the other. But yeah, so you approach your kirtan and you were like, oh, I'm nervous about this, and I was nervous too. I was like, oh, I'm scared about this. But pardon me, something calls you to do it. Something called me to do it, and what called me to do it was my asana practice and meditation practice in and of itself. It just wasn't giving me, and it just wasn't giving me enough. It just wasn't giving me what I needed. I needed something else. I needed more, and yeah, so then I started doing that, and sadly that isn't going on at the minute, because kirtan is a practice that really needs to be experienced live, and in a group thing. You can't really do that online.
Yeah. I don't think it would translate well, like screen to screen. But it's for me, it was the community. It was a lovely aspect of community with it, and and it was something very tribal about it as well. Like sort of everybody sitting around in a circle and chanting and singing and stuff. But I think technology goes a certain way in connecting us in a kind of base level. But with stuff like that, I don't think you can ever really replicate unless you're actually doing it.
Yeah, and then you can
listen to yoga, you can listen to kirtan music, but you just, participating in a whole online kirtan, no, it just doesn't work. So Gillian and Victor, who I do kirtan with, yeah, it's, they understand that, and that there's no online kirtan because it's not a mode of putting the practice forward. So, but fingers crossed, the lockdown will start to ease and
Yeah.
see what
Hopefully
happens.
so. Yeah,
Yeah,
and now I feel like I've held myself to this. I have to go and do kirtan. After
yeah,
this, now I've
definitely.
said like I love kirtan. I'm gonna have to go
Yeah,
and
you'll have to come in.
yeah, get over myself
Yeah, yeah,
and come and experience that. It sounds good.
yeah.
Absolutely. Have you been doing kirtan long?
Just since last October.
Okay, cool, cool.
So October was the first. Well, I've gone to two kirtans before, maybe a few years back.
Okay,
Just one-offs with massive gaps in between, like not like a. And I've chanted in workshops and a class and started looking at chanting at home. Um, I like to look at Kundalini chants. Funny, I'm not doing any Kundalini chanting now in a long, long time. And then I started Kirtan then in October, and I went every month. October, November, December, January. Was there
cool.
one in February? I don't even know. Can't remember. Maybe there was one I didn't get to. And then the old virus struck.
It did indeed. Well, I'll definitely get kirtaning then after this. We'll have to kind of,
Definitely, yeah.
yeah. It was just one of those things. Like we did one, I think, every week or twice a week when I was away, and it was like it freaked me out initially, and now I'm kind of like I wish I had participated more, in hindsight. But
Yeah, it truly does raise your vibration, and
yeah,
maybe some people would roll their eyes at that and be like, oh, that's just a bunch of waffle or whatever. And it's like, it's so good for it's so good for you. It's good for your heart. It's good for your soul. It's good for your mind. It makes you feel joyous. But yeah, just another practice that people can explore. It's something that I do miss, actually, to be honest. I do miss it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, hopefully we'll get back soon to kind of real world activities and doing stuff like that.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I had a question there, but it's gone completely out of my head because the kirtan thing.
yeah, I know
Cool.
it just went off on like a kirtan tangent, but that happens.
Yeah, I could. What with in terms of like your mental health, would you say like yoga obviously benefits that? Like it's something that kind of is a regular thing that helps your mental health?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, whenever
Mm-hmm.
I came to yoga in like 2007, like my mental health was like at an all-time low. Um, and I was a very lost, young man in Northern Ireland. I didn't really have any dreams. I didn't have any inspiration. I didn't know where I fit. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Um, just depressed and I had an awful lot of anxiety, but was just really, was really had anxiety, was definitely depressed, and probably didn't even know that I was depressed, to be quite honest. Um, and going to those first classes really felt like I was being held, like I'd come back to who I was, like I started to really get to know who I was again. I really started to like myself. I didn't like myself very much.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't like myself at all.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was recognizing that that's what was going on, that I didn't like myself. And yeah, I think that's been a bit of a struggle, since then, since like the mid noughties. um and yeah, my yoga practice does help me, but it doesn't just help me. Like recently I've started to, like last year I went on antidepressants for the first time.
Okay.
And years back, whenever I first started yoga and when I first started experiencing problems with my mental health, I was so anti-drug, anti-medicine. It was just like, okay, no, I need to do Reiki and yoga and acupuncture and
Mm-hmm.
herbs and um, angel healings and cards and all, like everything except medicine.
Yeah.
Now I did go to like a drug and alcohol charity in Derry. I'm from Derry, and that's where I was living at the time. And I did go there. It's a place called Hurt,
Okay.
HERT. And I got listening ear. I had a listening ear service, so I could talk, and then people who were trained in listening ear, they would listen, and you don't get advice in listening ear. People they're just there to hear you speak. So I got listening ear, and I got acupuncture, and that's whenever I kind of started my foray into like alternative health.
Okay.
Whilst still drinking and still smoking, and
Mm-hmm.
but not really going out, because I got to a stage where I was just kind of broken mentally, that I couldn't even go into a shop without like having a panic attack, or if I went out with people and went into a bar and I didn't know very many people, like I would just leave and not say goodbye to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I would just stay for one drink and then just sneak up, just slip off and just go home. So my yoga practice helped me to find my way back to me, but it wasn't instantaneous.
Mm-hmm.
It took about a good 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And that's whenever I felt that I was ready to become a teacher. And I wanted I wanted to feel that the practice had worked for me, and it had up until that point, and it still does continue to. But I wanted the practice I wanted to look at my life and be like, my yoga practice has helped me to get from here to here, and I am a changed man because of it. And it was true. It definitely did. So then that's why I decided to become a teacher, so that I could learn even more to help myself, but then I could start to give that practice over to others, because there was a noticeable change in who I was as a person. And then obviously through teaching and everything, that continues to grow. But then I've had a couple of breakdowns the past 10, 12, 13 years, and I had one last year. Again, it was just a complete anxiety attack, panic attack, and so that was last year. And the previous time that I had one before that was 2016, but the one last year kind of came completely out of the blue, and I couldn't put my finger on why that happened. So, and it was quite terrifying, but I'd got to the stage that I knew that I wasn't mentally well, and that can be a really hard thing to come to terms with, because of how mental health can be portrayed in the media, or how you think of it yourself, or how you think other people are going to think of it. You don't want to appear to be like, oh yeah, he's weird, or he's crazy, or he's a freak, or he's but I got to the stage where I knew that I needed medical help. So I went to my GP immediately, and I was like, I am not in a good way. And it was obvious I wasn't in a good way. I had to take a month off work, and even whenever I came back, I wasn't, I still wasn't 100%. It still took, I had to go on medication. Oh, well, I didn't have to go on medication. It was offered, and I decided that was the best course of action, and that massively helped me. So since then, I've been, in recent months, I've been quite vocal in terms of giving my story over about that, because, and since I have so many messages in my email, DMs, my inbox, of like, you don't know what that means to so many people out there. Like, I'm on that drug as well. I've been down that road. Oh my
That's
gosh,
amazing.
you never would have known. And so being vulnerable like that and sharing your story like that, it makes you appear to be like a real person, because people can look at teachers and people can look at yoga practitioners and be like, oh yeah, they're yogis, like, they've got their lives together, they drink green smoothies and everything's perfect for them. And that's far from the case, so yeah, mental health and yoga definitely helps, but it is, for me personally, it's not something that I can rely on solely to to tend to my mental health, I needed medical help as well.
That's amazing though, that you kind of can share that story and that it can like impact other people, and you being so vulnerable I just think it's like a nice thing. Like it's cool. It's a good thing I'm trying to do the same myself, but everyone's at different sort of like everyone's on their own path, but it's so nice. And it's cool the way, like, I mean, sometimes you get people I have discussions with people who are maybe in one camp of kind of alternative medicine and yoga and acupuncture and green smoothies and cleanses and all this, and they're very kind of opposed, to medication or anything else. And then you get the other side that's kind of like, this is it, take this and you'll be fine. And I think it's cool because it doesn't have to be one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. And that's what I've found out in my own journey as well. You can kind of, if it works for you, if it helps, take it, use it. You don't need to be strictly, one side of things, but that's
strictly one or the other. Cool. Yeah. Can I just say congratulations today, if you don't mind, like on the show, right, on your sobriety.
That wasn't intentional, by the way, for me when we picked this day.
Yeah, because I picked this day.
Yeah, you picked the day. So because when
tomorrow, or it could be next week.
When I put it out, I was like, I hope Dennis doesn't think I've like kind of picked.
Well, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I was like, this will. I was like, will I say it? Will I not say it? And it's like, and now the time is here where it's like, yeah. Well, so congratulations on your 4 years of being sober.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's still really strange for me to put that stuff out there, because even as I was putting that out today, I did quite a bit of writing about it last night and stuff, and I was like, do I want to share this? And then again, I started to feel really anxious and scared, and I was like, so I went and did some yoga and meditation. Like, sounds like so cliched, and then I was like, you know what? I'm terrified, so I'm just going to put it out there and say, but yeah, thank you very much. It's still strange.
I mean, it's brilliant that you were able to put it out there, and it's brilliant that you're 4 years sober, and like I'm sure that's for you, that's a daily practice, that's a weekly practice, because we're surrounded by alcohol constantly. Absolutely. And it takes a real amount of emotional maturity to put that out there. That's what I'm finding. You get to a place where you feel emotionally mature to share your story like that. Because I think when we post on social media and things, we can be like, okay, so who am I putting this out here for and why? Mm-hmm. And if you're putting something out there because you genuinely want to share your journey to, and you don't know how it's going to land. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know how it's going to land. But rarely people would turn around and be like, oh, I wind your neck in.
I know, well, that's it. But you kind of, you face the risk of putting that out there. It's a strange time just to put anything out on social media as well, given the last couple of weeks. But you do kind of, you never want to kind of be not publicly criticized or whatever, but you're putting it out on a public kind of platform, and it could go to other places and people could share it and all that kind of stuff there. And that's the biggest thing that I kind of like, the what if, what if someone doesn't agree with this? But you can't please everybody. And that's not really the reason why, like I choose to put it out there. It's a kind of thing where I'm just kind of trying to explain my journey, or kind of, vocalize my journey and my story.
And I think Brene Brown says that, your vulnerability is your superpower, and she's quite right. And when you are so vulnerable like that, and you put that across, you open yourself up to working with people who have gone through similar, that you can provide support to, that you can that want help, that want to be guided, that want to be led, that want to be mentored, and your work really fills your heart. It has a purpose, and so congrats for putting that out there.
Thank you, and thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that's really cool.
There's like I am not sober. don't take drugs, illegal drugs anymore. But I still drink. And
Okay.
over the past like 10 years, so like the first 5 years of yoga practice, yeah, still battling, with things. And in recent years, I do like to have a drink, but in recent years, I have cut my drinking way down,
Okay.
way down. And funnily enough, the past couple of weeks, really, I've been thinking about totally giving up drink, and whether that means going sober, I don't know if that's what you then call it, or I'm 40 in like a year and a half, so I was like, oh, I could, suppose you can go sober whenever you want. It doesn't have to be, like, oh, I have to wait till then. But I did think, oh, I could turn 40, have my party, and then that could be
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Close
that's
the
it.
door
And like
on
everyone's on
drink.
their own kind of journey with it. And like, I can only speak personally, for me, but like people, I know a lot of people who kind of dab in and out as it kind of as their lifestyle or whatever, as it suits them or whatever. I just, you don't need to kind of be so hard on yourself with a label or whatever. You could
Yeah.
just, but I know just,
with like drinking, and I suppose with like addiction in general, whenever I would drink or whenever I would take something, for example, well, I know this to be true, it was an escape for me,
mhm,
but I also felt like something inside me which wanted more,
mhm,
even though I knew it was bad for me. But in that moment, I was just like, this is taking me to this place where I can just get away from everything, or I can self-medicate myself because I don't like myself.
mhm.
I don't like myself, therefore I'll get inebriated, or I'm afraid of expanding myself and moving towards my dreams, so I'll just stay in this place. But you don't have that awareness at the time when you're doing it.
No. Well, it's
That
kind
awareness
of,
doesn't come until much later.
yeah, I read something the other day and it was talking about like your mindset when you're taking any substance or taking like a lot of drink or whatever. It's not, you can't think clearly. So you're trying to assess and make like critical decisions when you yourself aren't thinking clearly. And that just in itself doesn't really add up. You're trying to, figure something out in a mindset where personally for me anyway, I couldn't, I wasn't in a mind frame where I could sit down and rationally think things through, so
Mhm.
it's a bit of a weird one, but the only reason I stopped is because I couldn't do the moderation thing at all. It didn't exist with me, and that shows up a lot in other areas of my life. But I would kind of love to say, oh yeah, I could, be a part-time, person that likes to go out and socially drink or whatever, but I'm just not wired that way. And it took about a year for me to kind of really that to sink in as something that was just a fact. It wasn't like an opinion. Like I didn't have a choice whether I liked it or whether I didn't. It was just, it's just what it is, But
Yeah.
It's just kind of like that inner demon, that inner monster, that whenever it's fed,
mhm.
it just wants to it just wants destruction. It just wants it all, and then it's just gonna mess you up like every single time. So then you're just
Yeah.
like, I can't do this, you know. No, so I have learned how to be able to drink in moderation now, but whether I will continue with that, I don't know. But I like the idea that I'm now looking at that and going, will I continue to drink or will I not? Like I've given up alcohol for like 6 months at a time,
Okay.
no problem.
Well, okay.
But I do look at this now, and again, that's expanded your awareness. That's your practice, and that's your practice in action,
Mhm.
where you're looking at things like there's things I don't like about myself in terms of how I approach things, how I react to things. Instead of being defensive and going like, oh, I am who I am, and I'm not going to change for anyone, or I'm unapologetic about who I am. It's like, yeah, but sometimes you're being an asshole, or
Yeah.
sometimes you're being really unreasonable, or
Yeah.
sometimes you're being like really bitchy,
Uh-huh.
and to recognize that those are qualities that you have, like that shadow work, like looking at your shadow and being like, I
Yeah.
know that this is here,
Yeah.
and I want to deal with these things. That's really hard work.
It is. It's not easy. It really is not easy. And to consistently do that it's shit. Sometimes it's just shit. And one of the things that I've sort of realized recently is just because you or somebody might have those qualities, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person. That doesn't define you. You know, like I have a really addictive personality. It's just something that I have. I've got that mindset where I'm like, it's shiny and flashy. That makes me feel good. So let's just do that again until like the thing itself just, you know, encompasses my whole life. But that doesn't necessarily, you know, I carried a lot of shame and negativity and just bad feelings in general around that, but that doesn't have to define you personally anyway as a person. You know, that you've got so many other amazing and, you know, factors and attributes and everything else. That doesn't have to be it. You know, I always as well tend to focus on the negative, especially about myself. You know, it's one of those things you could do like something and get like 100 people say, you know, that's great. And one person say, hang on a second, you didn't do that quite right. And I will always find a way to focus on the negative, you know?
I think Yogi Bhajan from Kundalini Yoga, their teachings about the mind is that there's a neutral mind, there's a positive mind, and there's a negative mind, and that human beings are programmed to always, their default is to always go to the negative mind.
Is that like a defensive thing, or?
Who knows? Maybe it's just an evolutionary thing.
Okay, cool.
In terms of like looking out for danger, you know, all that kind of stuff, fight or flight, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So the goal is not to go to positive and stay there. It's to find that place of neutrality where you don't react. However, I think reactions are, you know, key. Like you learn from them, you know, to be neutral and to be like, you know, completely centered constantly. That is completely unrealistic.
Absolutely.
But in terms of like going to the negative or obsess, I totally know what you mean, because I can just, and that's where you can get into those places of rumination in the mind. And that's where anxiety starts to kick in, depression starts to kick in, when you go to that negative place and you stay there with it and you can't break that cycle. But that in and of itself is an addiction.
No, absolutely. And that's something that like,
that is an addictive.
Because bringing
process.
Just yoga brings me back into like now, into the day, into the present moment, and that's something that helps break that cycle. Sometimes it doesn't break it right away, and sometimes it's a few days or whatever. But when you were saying there about like the positive side of things as well, like I feel this, like over the last couple of years, there's such like an emphasis on like forced positivity with mental health and with just stuff in general, where it's like, if you have a positive mindset, then you will go and achieve great things. Then you won't be negative. And it's kind of like the pendulum swings the other way too far too, because I wouldn't really like to live in a sort of existence where I'm just constantly like happy-go-lucky, like thumbs up all the time, because I don't think that in itself is healthy. Like I think there's a balance between the two, but like especially with Instagram and like you see it on social media all the time, like just like fix yourself with 5 easy steps in this positive attitude and you can reframe your life. And it's not, I don't really buy into it. Like I think that you have to have both, you know.
It's definitely a spectrum that needs to be explored, and that's why I love that, the fact that I found this, there was a name for doing this shadow work, you know, and that's what counseling is for. That's what psychotherapy is for. That is what for. So I'm waiting on psychotherapy. I had one appointment and then the virus struck, and then they were like, okay, we can do this over the phone, or we can postpone it and we can wait until we'll see you in person. I was like, oh, I'd rather do this in person.
Okay.
But I got a letter in from my psychiatrist. I'm going to catch up with them over the phone this month. But you know, those talking practices, those psychosomatic, those practices, you know, that is where an awful lot of the, I call it deep work. That's where an awful lot of the deep work can occur, and that's shadow work as well in and of itself, you know.
Yeah.
And we all have, what I'm starting to understand is that each and every one of us, through no one's fault, has trauma in their lives from growing up, from your parents, from your family, from your school, from something that someone said to you when you were 4. You know, that we have interpreted, and then our whole life can be built around all of these things that we believe to be true, and some things just aren't true, but we've built our life around that. So I'm interested to see what's going to go on there. I know that's going to be really, really tough, because there's going to be stuff that obviously that's going to come up. And will I be sad, or will I be angry? Will I be negative? Will I be, when I'm going through that? Probably, probably, but that needs to occur in order to, break through those walls of anger and shame and resentment and all those things. Like, I know whenever I was growing up, I know one of the big reasons why I started to take drugs was because I didn't want to be gay. Like, I couldn't, it's not something that I mean, did I accept it? I mean, was I, I was a gay man. Yes, I was. Was I happy that I was? No. I used to say frequently, if I had a choice between, like being gay or being straight, like, of course I'd be straight. Like, so that even in of itself, I was going, yeah, even saying that, like, there was a disconnect, there was a dissonance where I was going, yeah, I accept myself, but if I had to change myself, I would. So there was no self-love there. There was a lot of shame. There was a lot of feeling like I was less of a man, that I wasn't, there was all the nasty things that people would say. Now, nobody really said very many nasty things to me, which was lucky. I was lucky, but maybe strangers would say things in the street or whatever, or people would have an attitude towards you, and you couldn't put your finger on why it was, but that was you knew that's what the reason was. Like homophobia in Northern Ireland. So yeah, I just wasn't happy. So then it was just like, yeah, let's ply myself with everything and like not deal with that. So and I haven't done an awful lot of work. Well, I've done no work with like LGBT centric mental health talking, because even then I was just like, no, I'm the same as everybody else. I don't want like specific sort of treatment, but just because I'm LGBT, and then because of that, I didn't get any treatment. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things, and we're multi-layered. You think you get into a layer and you're working through it, and then it's just like, oh shit, there's all this other stuff.
Yeah, here we go again.
And
there's
that's the way of life when you're a yoga practitioner. It really is. You can't start doing work on yourself and then being like, okay, so that's enough work for me now. Whenever you see stuff that you want to work, that needs to be worked on, you need, that's the practice of yoga. It's working through your shit.
I can't imagine, like, when you were saying there, sorry, about your experience about like, I can't imagine what that would be like, obviously, like, because it just must have been like so difficult. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can only try and empathize, but obviously I don't know firsthand at all what, but it must, like, that sounds like really, really tough.
And like, you can still go out and like, date and everything, and like, and try to, and you are accepting of yourself, and you're like, you're not disgusted. I wasn't disgusted by myself or anything like that, but I was just like, why did this happen to me? I was looking to blame someone. I was looking to, well, this is your fault, that I'm like this, or like, why did it have to be me? Oh, I'm such an embarrassment to like my family, or, a million and one horrible thoughts just go through your mind. And most gay people, when they do experience those thoughts, not all gay people do. And now the world is changing so much that people are coming out whenever they're like 8, 9, 10, 11, or they're just like, yeah, I'm gay. And then the parents, it's barely even a coming out. It's just like, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like an understanding that people are just like, oh yeah, my son's been gay for, well, like, how long? Yeah. Oh, he's always been gay. When did he come out? No, he didn't really come out. He's my son. So now we're getting to this place where we're starting to break down this whole barrier of having to come out in some pockets of society, and that will just start to seep out. So with everything that's going on now in the world, with the coronavirus, with Brexit, with Black Lives Matters, with the trans, with trans acceptance, with LGBT rights, and the revolution is currently, it has begun.
It certainly feels like that. It feels a bit mad as well. I read something the other day that was like really caught me, and it was like your brain was never programmed to try and experience all of the world's problems at once. And I was like, that's why I'm feeling stressed, because I've spent an hour looking at this, and I'm like kind of on a loop with social media. But it does definitely feel like there's been a shift in the last even few weeks. It's like things are happening very quickly, it seems, anyway.
Yeah,
It seems that things have sped up, and society is changing in front of our eyes right now. And whenever there's change like that, it's of course the establishment, and of course things that are in place, they're going to fight that. They don't want things to change, and it's always for financial reasons and nothing else. And it's always to keep the status quo. And it's like, here we are, we're in the midst of this change. Are we going to be out of this by the end of the year? No. Is this going to be an ongoing? But yeah, like it'll take, however long it takes for society to change, to value every individual, and for everyone to respect each other.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think it's like sped up as well by the internet, by the fact that things can be shared instantaneously, and you can see what's happening like in real time at the other side of the world, which is amazing. And but it's also, I find it sometimes really overwhelming, but it's amazing in general that those kind of conversations and stuff are happening and taking place at the minute. And there is like that transformative shift. You can sort of you can see it, like you're saying, happening like in real time,
It's happening in real time. And the idea of, like, we'll take the Black Lives Matter movement that's going on, this idea of like, oh, well, all lives matter. It's like, no one's saying that they don't.
Yeah.
But currently these lives, these people are being brutalized, and people are being brutalized and oppressed because of the color of their skin. So this needs to be dealt with now. This doesn't mean that you are less important, or that you don't have problems, or that you're not worthy. It's like, but you're not being oppressed. Same for LGBT people, same and trans people are within that, and Native Americans and everything. It's, people need to fight their fight, and they can't fight it on their own. And if we are, like, I am privileged as a white person, but I am less privileged because I'm not heterosexual, but I'm still quite privileged. The fact that I'm not heterosexual, that would be just, if you're looking at the ladder of privilege, if there is one, we are very high up on the list as white men, and if we can give our voices to others that are oppressed, then absolutely. And that in and of itself as well, that is the practice of yoga. You can't just turn a blind eye and pretend that things aren't going on. You need to be actively involved, and you can't fight every fight either. Do you know what I mean? So that's why our gifts and our vulnerability can open us up, and you can be like, yeah, well, I support whatever, but I'm really good at this over here, and this is where I'm going to be. And when you've got people like that doing all the things and all the places with all the people, then that's when change is going to come. So
yeah, that's cool. That's really beautifully put. Brilliant. Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks.
Yeah. It's the last few weeks I haven't wanted to put anything massively up online because I'm so scared of saying the wrong thing, and I feel like it's a time that I should be listening rather than speaking. One of those ones. So I'm sort of like taking not a back seat, but I'm trying to do what I can to like learn more about it, educate myself, more about it, because I had that in itself as a privilege to be able to, take this time to learn about it rather than being somebody who's actually afflicted with it day in, day out and having to deal with it in their actual life. But you beautifully made it all come back to the yoga there, which was amazing. So yeah, that's a good.
I have to find a way to bring it back to yoga, because if I don't, it could just go on and on. I could just go for it, you know.
No, man, that's lovely. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. That's a really nice place to end it. Like, you know, bring it back to the do your thing. So, so are you teaching at the minute online? Where can people find you, or what can people do to get a hold
I'm
of you?
teaching online at the minute. I've just started my Learn Yin platform. So you can find me on learnyin.yoga. So there's a free, people can download a free beginner's video practice for yin. And I'm in the middle of creating content and creating stuff for that. So I'm on there. And you can go to yogawithdennis.com, and then there's links to everywhere that I teach as well. On there, I teach for Flow Studio here, and I teach for my friend in New Jersey just set up her virtual online yoga studio called Root. So it's Root Yoga Wellness, and I teach on there. And then I've got my own podcast, Spaces Between Us, and cool. People can find me there and can listen there.
Cool. Well, I'll put it all, if there's a description with all of this, I'll stick it all in there. But thank you so much for sharing your story. That was really cool to hear. And thank you for being the first person on this adventure of whatever it is. So thank you.
Well, thank you for asking me. It was a great pleasure to be here.
No worries, Dennis. Thank you. Cheers, man.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, dude. So I hope you enjoyed that or took something away from it. It was a real pleasure to sit down and talk with Dennis, and I really hope it's not the last time that we kind of sit down and have a conversation like that. You can find Dennis again at Yoga with Dennis on Instagram and Facebook to connect with him on his social media. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.